The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says it's on the verge of a national strike in the bus passenger sector. This as wage talks with the South African Road Passenger Bargaining Council hit a deadlock. The union is demanding, among other things, that the lowest paid employee in the sector be paid 12,000 rands per month from the current 7,800. For more on this, I'm joined now by Numsa spokesperson Pagamile Majola. Pagamile, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight. Were we not here 3 years ago around the same time having this very same conversation? What has gone wrong?
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me on the show. Yes, indeed, it is that time of the year again when we have to negotiate the wage agreement in the bus sector. And indeed, 3 years ago, there was a dispute and subsequently a strike. The agreements that have been in place have been one-year agreements. So in the last 2 years, 2020, 2021, we've found each other. We've agreed. Let's put it that way. We've agreed. We're not satisfied with the agreements, but we agreed. But where we are this year is deadlocked. And if we're unable to find each other, unfortunately, strike action is imminent.
Yeah. What happened at the negotiations last month? What are the areas of dispute? What did you manage to obtain? What did you manage not to get?
We've been in discussions with employers in the South African, in the Bus Passenger Bargaining Council. And these discussions began sometime in February. We have tabled our demands, which, of course, as you correctly put it in your intro, one of the demands that we have demanded is that the lowest paid worker who's earning currently 7,800 rand be moved up to 12,000 rands a month. We demand an across-the-board increase that includes allowances. This issue of the allowances is a burning issue for our members because for the last 2 years, the agreement that we've settled on has been an agreement that has resulted in those allowances not being increased at all. And in fact, this is one of the sticking points in the talks. We also demand an industry medical aid, which covers all workers. And this for us, again, is also a burning issue. There are some bus companies that offer medical aid, but the rates are extremely expensive. And I don't have to tell you about the really terrible state of public health care. But unfortunately, our members, due to how expensive medical aid is, they're forced to utilize the state health services. And this for them has really become an issue where they are demanding some kind of medical aid where a contribution is made by the company so that they can actually afford it. So these are some of the demands that we've made. Unfortunately, the employer is really stubborn. They've only offered a 2.5% increase. And that 2.5% increase, Thabo, comes with with conditions. Included in those conditions is that we will let go of the demand for family responsibility leave, which is absurd, that we'll give up on the demand for medical aid, and that we will also give up the demand on increases on allowances. For our members, this is something that is unacceptable, given the massive sacrifices that they made during COVID in order to support the industry. So because the bus passenger employers are not making a meaningful offer, where we are right now is deadlocked. And unfortunately, the strike is likely to happen somewhere close to Good Friday weekend.
Now, you are saying that you believe that the sector has made a full recovery, because initially you're saying that the lower increase that you agreed to in the 2020-2021 period was because you understood that we were in a time of a pandemic, and therefore you were assisting the sector in a sense to try and make a recovery. You believe that they have made full recovery now, that they could be able to pay the kind of salaries that you're demanding?
Absolutely. The bus passenger sector has actually been operating, even though, of course, there were those periods when there was a hard lockdown, but that was for a very brief period. After that, they've been operating at virtually full capacity. At the same time, we mustn't forget that they are heavily subsidized by this government. And so for us, bearing in mind that they have pretty much been operating at full capacity, plus they're heavily subsidized. We think that it is fair for us to make these demands. I think it is important that your viewers must remember that our members are not cushioned. They are not subsidized. Just yesterday, we heard the shocking announcement of the unemployment statistics, which have increased. And as you know, Thabo, the South African working class supports 5 to 7 unemployed family members on their salary. And you can imagine, here you have workers who are earning as little as 7,800 Rand in this economy. How do we expect these families to survive? We believe that the demands that we're making are reasonable. We think that employers can do much more than 2.5%. And all we're asking is that they consider the sacrifices that we made in order to cushion this industry. We were mindful of COVID. We were mindful of the sector and its struggles. When is the sector going to care about workers and their families and the struggles that they're going through?
Now, are you asking across the board, this 12,000, the last time we were having a conversation about relief drivers and how they were paid and their leave days and so on and so forth, has that been resolved?
Indeed, the increase that we want is across the board. One of the other sticking points is the fact that employers only are wanting to give workers a 2.5% increase, but one of the conditions that they've placed is that it will only be applicable to those who are employed as of up to the 30th of March 2022. So any new crop of workers that arrives thereafter will be earning much less. Now for us, that's completely unacceptable, because what you're doing when you are actually creating that type of setup is you're creating a two-tier system where some workers earn more than others for doing exactly the same kind of work. And our experience in those types of scenarios is that in no time, those workers who earn more end up being retrenched in favor of those who earn less. So we absolutely will not accept the conditions that have been placed before us. We feel that our backs are against the wall. And if the employers care about passengers, care about making a profit margin during the busiest time of the year, they will come to the negotiating table, sit down with us, and we can find each other somewhere along the middle.
So where things stand right now, the ball is in the employer's court. Are you waiting for them to come to you?
Absolutely, the ball is in their court. Unfortunately, the last mediation that we had with them did not bear any fruit. They would not budge at all. They made zero concessions. Even though we were willing to make concessions, we were willing to make concessions on some of the other allowances. We were even willing to make concessions on the wage demand. But they were only stuck on 2.5% with the conditions that I explained to you. Now, that's not negotiating in good faith if you're not even going to move an inch in order to meet us. So we are at the point where we've been issued with the strike certificate. We have concluded the picketing rules. We are now just, in that cooling off period of 30 days. And if nothing changes in this period, then yes, strike action is definitely imminent.
Demands around the overtime for workers as well. You're saying some of them work a 14-hour shift and a night shift allowance. There is no provision for those workers?
Well, this is the thing that is highly distressing for our members, because this issue of it's this system that's in place where majority of workers, bus drivers specifically, are working 14-hour shifts. Which sometimes starts as early as 3 a.m. This is called spread over, and it's done to accommodate the return trip. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but if you have to pull a 14-hour shift every single day, you can imagine the impact on workers. I think you can even tie it to the road safety stats that we have in the public transportation sector, because it really is quite shocking that this is the practice where drivers are expected to drive or work for such long periods of time. We're saying that these hours should be reduced. We're even proposing 10 hours, just so that it can be something that is more manageable, that workers can live with. But currently, this 14-hour system is completely unfair. We're also demanding payment of night shift allowance in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And so we do believe that what we're asking for is really not a lot. These are some of the lowest paid workers in the bus sector. These are some of the hardest working people. You've just heard 14-hour shifts. This is a sector that is heavily subsidized by government and doesn't even want to disclose, by the way, the extent of their subsidy. But they have the audacity to plead poverty. And this for us is part of the problem. We can only believe them if they're willing to be transparent about how much support they're getting from government. If indeed their subsidy is not enough as they claim, as unions, we can get together. We have the power to lobby government for more money. It's not unheard of. As you know, in 2016, Numsa lobbied hard to the Department of Trade and Industry for it to intervene on behalf of steel companies because of the price of steel. We've done that. So it's not outside the realm of imagination that we could do the same when it comes to bus companies. But they should work with us. And right now, they're not disclosing. They're not being honest. They're simply trying to, demand that we accept this 2.5. And they frankly have not given us enough justification that we should accept this. Our members have made it very clear, given how many sacrifices they've made, given all the concessions our members have made, even though they are paid so poorly, they feel that they've had enough. And if the employers are not willing to change their offer, then unfortunately strike action is exactly what we're going to resort to.